Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. I'm Nkechi Nnanna.
And I'm Rufai Hosseini. The dust is yet to settle over the ruling of the Supreme Court as the strike at an appeal filed by the People's Democratic Party and its presidential candidate, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, by a five-man panel led by Justice Atiku Mohammed. Reactions have trailed this long-awaited judgment, linking it to whether or not the candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the 2019 elections, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, is making progress in the Election Petition Tribunal, which challenges the victory of President Muhammadu Buhari at the February 23, 2019 elections.
Critics of Nigerian politics say it is about 3 times so far that the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar, has lost some of the applications his counsel sought before the Presidential Election Tribunal of Nigeria.
Others did say that the presidential candidate of the PDP is very optimistic due to the alleged widespread of electoral malpractice during the 2019 elections.
Joining us now from our Abuja studio to discuss this critical issue is Segun Sowunmi, former spokesman for Atiku Abubakar campaign organization and a very high-ranking member of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP. Welcome, Mr. Sowunmi.
Right. Welcome, Mr. Sowunmi.
Yes, hello, Nkechi. Hello, Rufai.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome. Now, the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal has reserved the date for the judgment. Is your principal, Atiku Abubakar, and your party, the PDP, satisfied with the case so far?
Well, I think that we will say that we are cautiously expectant of how it will all play out in the final analysis. Remember that you opened with the Supreme Court situation where one of our pleas was not exactly accepted. I need to educate the audience of precisely what it means, lest they interpret it to mean that something untoward or not so pleasant has happened to the case. That's not the case. That's not the true position of things. At the beginning of trial, our counsel sought to access materials from INEC, and it was not coming on time. Therefore, they went to court and then went all the way to the Supreme Court. Because the tribunal has eventually commenced its work and was about finishing, it was no longer necessary for the Supreme Court to weigh in on that issue. The Supreme Court simply rested and dismissed that matter, believing that within trial, those issues would either have been considered, and if they have not been properly considered, the PDP and its candidate and its counsels will have more than enough opportunity to bring the matter before the Supreme Court if it gets to that, and then they can weigh in properly. That's precisely what has happened. Anything other than that is just wishful imagination, throwing up smoke screen, trying to get people to be diverted from the real issues. What are the real issues? Soberly, the important thing for us all as Nigeria is to ask that, are we going to keep having elections that will be not so credible? Or are we going to, in total, media, civil society, everybody in the country, going to reduce the critical and important issues around the integrity of our selection process in an election to the responsibility of just one individual, the candidate, and probably 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of his followers? So what we are doing, what His Excellency Atiku Abubakar is doing, is deepening the jurisprudence, deepening the conversation, deepening the process of looking at how elections 2019 particularly was handled, going to court on the body of evidence that they are able to put together, and asking for a determination of 5 major critical things. And let me try and tell you what those 5 things are, so that then we can then start the conversation and the banter. The first is that whether the second respondent, in this case Muhammadu Buhari, was at the time of the election qualified to contest, that needs to be determined. The second is whether the second respondent, Muhammadu Buhari, submitted to the first respondent, INEC, affidavit containing false information of a fundamental nature in terms of its qualification. The third is whether from the pleadings and the evidence it was established that the respondent Muhammadu Buhari was elected by lawful votes cast on that day. The fourth is was invalid by reason of corrupt practice. The fifth being that whether the presidential election conducted by INEC was invalid by reason of non-compliance with Electoral Act 2010 as amended and the electoral guidelines for 2019. Basically, these are the 5 grounds that the presidential panel of inquiry or the tribunal will have to weigh in on. And like you notice, you would observe that the conduct, the candor, the language, the attitude of the candidate, Atiku Abubakar, has been very measured, very democratic, and very reasonable. There has been zero call to anybody to overheat the polity. There have been zero call to anarchy. Everything has been done within what is allowed within the law. Now, if as a people, we all then ask ourselves that, okay, after 2019, would we have another 2019 and another 2019 and another 2019? At what point in time do we then ask our judiciary to weigh in heavily on precisely how our nation is going about its elections? Remember, we have gone past 20 years now. So whatever teething problems we're having in that process, we ought to say 20 years is long enough for us to correct it. So basically, that's what it is, and we are very hopeful. We are a bit expectant of victory. But again, we're not going to write the judgment by ourselves, so we have to wait until the judges make their pronouncements.
Okay, Mr. Sowunmi, a lot of people will say, it's good when you talk about the things for the future of elections in Nigeria. But some people will be quick to say, this almost something similar happened in 2007, after the elections that brought in Musa Yar'Adua, which led to the Waste Commission. And also, the People's Democratic Party had a chance to be able to implement the Waste Commission when they were in power, but they didn't do the same. So are these some of the things you'll be looking at? And secondly, Alhaji Shitu, the presidential candidate of APDA, was here last week, and he said, all of this matter you're talking about, the president's certificate and and qualification really to be able to contest for the president, that it's all frivolous matter, that the PDP should go and focus on how to build this country. What would you say to those two comments?
First things first, on the gains, issues, what could have and what should have happened over the 16-year period of the PDP, one cannot, in all seriousness, say that, oh, they were perfect. No, they can't be. But the important thing to note is that the business of improving how a nation is administered is continual. Therefore, when you have another party come in, they have also a great opportunity to weigh in on how those issues that have bedeviled the country and try to improve on it, if they can. Now, if they cannot, we cannot now say that just because we are in PDP, me not being president or anything that could have really impacted it directly, we're now going to say that we're no longer able to have these conversations from a holistic and idealist point of view, just because you want to constantly dangle the 15-year report. Look, there are many things that could have been done better, could have been done smarter, could have been done more effectively, but that's why you have a new government. And so if they cannot try their hands on it and they cannot improve it and it's going to be status quo and everything is going to remain, then I guess maybe we need to look in another direction for the kind of leadership that the country deserves. On what Shitu, my friend, said, and APDA, I understand the game of when you have not really been interested in contesting an election or trying to win the prize of victory in a presidential election system. And then you find it very convenient to reduce a whole political party that was registered and given to you, under you, to become the appendage, to now be supporting what is difficult to support, to tolerate what is intolerable, or to ask that status quo be maintained just because you want to do the biddings of the people that are in charge today. Good luck to Shitu. But Shitu is not an interested party in this case. The election was strictly between the PDP and the APC in the real sense of the word. And the numbers also reflect same. What is allocated to the APC and what is allocated to the PDP, they are significant numbers. And if we believe very strongly that things have happened that are untoward, unacceptable, and wrong, thank goodness the founders of our democracy had put in place this reprieve that we can go and have a reprieve with the judiciary. And for us to have taken that route, unlike small parties who didn't even do any reasonable good or didn't get any numbers, who are calling for things that are not exactly correct or right or shouldn't be called for, I think Nigerians completely as a people, whether you are in opposition or you are in the ruling party, must be thankful to His Excellency Atiku Abubakar for showing how leaders should carry themselves in a democracy, for showing how a Democrat should approach issues, and for helping us all.
Okay, Mr. Sowunmi.
Because the alternative would not have been very pleasant.
Okay, Mr. Sowunmi, real quickly, what's your reaction to this? A lot of people are looking at the second judgment. I mean, because when we started the conversation on Monday before the line went up, we said it was a double whammy. The second judgment, very pertinently, that denied you the chance to be able to check the server, this big server in quotes here. And a lot of people said that was the last straw that broke the camel's back, because that was your main right, and that was the main thing you were pushing for in all of these prayers, that once the server wasn't checked, then there's nothing you can prove beyond reasonable doubt any longer to have a case. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I would just say that we can play the ostrich as a people if we like. The thing about the ostrich is that it puts its head in the sand and pretends as if nobody is saying it. If you have an electoral act that allows INEC the flexibility of doing electronic verification of your PVC, your thumbprints, and all of that, and that data obviously have to be called up to compare, and you say you don't have where you stored it, so how exactly are you going to use the verification machine to compare? If you say you have the capability within your training manual to train your people on how they're going to enter it and have a technical officer there and you say, oh, you have that, but you don't have where you stored it. If you say we did an election, you put a lot of money available for this purpose, you communicated in the true sense of the word that this was going to be an improvement in the Jega election, and you say you don't even have anywhere where you stored it.
We'll quickly go for a break now. I know you are going there, your thoughts, you're having a couple of aphorisms, but we'll go on a break, we'll come back, take your thoughts on aphorisms. We'll be right back, keep it locked right here. All right, welcome back. Still on One Issue on Rise News, and we've got the former spokesperson for the Atiku Abubakar campaign, Mr. Segun Sowunmi. Mr. Segun, before we went on that break, you were going on a pile of aphorisms saying, if we say this, if we say that. I just want you to continue with that thought process, and just go ahead with that thought process based on the question we asked earlier.
Well, long and short. The fact that it was escalated in public space, the issues around the server, does not mean that the totality of our case is based on that. That was the reason why at the beginning of the show, I read out the 5 prayers that we have before them. And on the server issue, you see, I have asked myself continually, what is to be gained in an INEC that has the responsibility to be an independent ombudsman for all the political parties in an election, to suddenly become an extension and an appanage of one of the ones that wins the election in trial? It's really difficult. INEC in an election has a responsibility to be fair to all the parties. And if there is a dispute, INEC has the moral duty not to become a clog in the wheel of the other party that is alleging of finding some faults with the issues. But be that as it may, I think the Nigerians are aware that there is a big elephant in the books of INEC that reflects precisely the position of PDP and Atiku Abubakar, which simply put is that we won that election. Sometimes in the course of life, you may...
Very interesting, Mr. Sowunmi. So speaking on the prayers of the PDP and Atiku Abubakar, one of the grounds on which this petition is based is whether President Buhari, like you said, submitted to INEC an affidavit containing false information of a fundamental nature in aid of his qualification for the said election. Now, the APC has claimed that this accusation is in a criminal nature, basically accusing the PDP and Atiku of blaming President Buhari for perjury, and thus should be proved beyond reasonable doubt. What are your thoughts on this?
You see, there are things that lawyers do that you sometimes ask, are they really only interested in winning at all costs but not anything truthful? We haven't said that they should go and jail him for anything criminal. What we are saying is that that lie is of a fundamental nature because the Electoral Act gives anybody who wants to contest a couple of routes and journeys by which he would, say he's eligible. But we're saying that having chosen the certificate route, he had done a great damage by lying of a fundamental nature by claiming what he cannot obviously present. Now, it's up to the courts now to make a pronouncement, to tell us in the real sense whether in this country now we have become a people where anybody can say he wants to be president, anybody can tell what sort of lie he wants on his form, and anybody can go to court and say that you don't have to prove anything, you don't have to submit anything, you don't have to present anything, and INEC can be, if you like, completely blinded to the responsibility of looking at those forms and asking the right question. And the courts will have to see whether they allow that. Because if they do, just like our lead counsel said, this, however the way, is going to have very great impact on election jurisprudence in Nigeria, not just today, but in the long time to come. Basically, that is what it is. We're not, like I keep saying, the court has all the right to go write the judgment as they see fit. But let no one come to public space and tell us that we cannot discuss a matter that is already before the public.
All right, Mr. Sowunmi, two quick questions for you. The very first one will be around the claims by the APC that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, at the time he was born, in the 40s, that area where he was born was under Cameroon, owing to the fact that we used to have an NCNC in Nigeria, Council of Nigeria and Cameroon's political party, but we had a plebiscite where Southern Cameroon did go ahead and join the other part of Cameroon. So they're pushing that case. And equally, the case of corruption leveled against the in-law of your principal as regards corrupt cases. The EFCC have been investigating that as regards money, 150 million euros. They've been investigating that, and now they're even pushing the investigation up to the presidential library of Olusegun Obasanjo. You're saying some money exchange hands with some people there. You want to shed light on these two questions?
The first is that on the nationality of Atiku Abubakar, I think it's laughable. It's laughable because more than any other person in Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar is one of those ones whose life has always been actually lived either in books, in memoirs, everybody knows that Atiku is from Jada. Everybody knows that Atiku's grandfather and his father, they are from Warno. Everybody knows that Atiku's mother is from somewhere in Jigawa State. Everybody knows about Maria Akonde. Everybody knows the school Atiku went to. Everybody knows when Atiku joined the custom. Atiku is so transparently available to Nigeria that it is the height of idiocy for a people who cannot even provide a single shred of evidence that their candidate went to any school or finished in any school or provide a certificate or even know, we don't even know where his mom or his dad or anybody is from. His nationality and his identity has not been discussed as transparently as that of Atiku. And then we will now come into public space and say that the former vice president of Nigeria was not born in Nigeria, is not a Nigerian. Well, the courts would also weigh in on that. But as far as we know, Atiku's grandfather, his father, they're all from Sokoto. His mother, Maria Akonde, is from Jigawa. No matter what you want to say around the plebiscite issues, that already shows you his nationality and his ancestry. That's that on that. If they want to rule otherwise, if they want to do a travesty of justice, let us wait until they hit us with the whammy. The other matter you asked on corruption. You see, the EFCC has a duty to follow through diligently, without let and without favoritism on any and all corruption cases. That we must accept because the country cannot be allowed to remain corrupt. But you see, when you know how elections are run in this our country, and you know what goes into the logistics of planning an election, and you are now seated on top of an election heist, which is now momentarily a victory that has been achieved, and you begin to say, go and look for Atiku's son. Go and look for Obasanjo. Go and look for all your enemies or people that have a diametrically opposing point of view with you at a time when you yourself know what goes down and what goes through and what is involved in this election process. You will just know that hypocrisy has no other name than yours. There is no truth there. Thank goodness God, the matter is before the court. I believe the court will look at it, and I believe because it's criminal in nature, they will look at it very well, and I'm very hopeful and trusting that they will give them a clean bill of health because some of the personalities involved, I know them. I know Baba Lele very well, and I know him to be someone who is really, really very, very decent. I know him to somebody who is very, very upright. I know him to somebody who is very diligent, and I know him to be someone who will not put his hand in anything that is illegal. Whatever the case may be, you are all members of the world community. Trump-up charges come up sometimes, and it is part of the political hierarchy of those that are in charge of our country now.
Okay, Mr. Sowunmi, briefly, considering the politics of this presidential election petition tribunal, do we take it for granted that no matter who wins at the tribunal, we must assume and maybe prepare that this case will get to the Supreme Court?
Well, we are actually quite hopeful that, and we are expectant, and we are optimistic, and we're actually praying that we will get victory so that that will then end the matter for us on our side, and we can quickly go and form government and build Nigeria out of the morass and mess that is in now. But if it comes that it doesn't come our way, we are reflective and sober and educated and, democratic enough to read the judgment. If we read the judgment, and His Excellency Atiku Abubakar and his team considers that there are grounds to go to the Supreme Court, then by all means, we are also brave enough, we are resolute enough, and we are determined enough to follow it to its logical conclusion. But we will not jump the gun. We believe that we will get victory on the first throw of the dice.
Okay, victory on the first throw of the dice. That date will be announced very soon. Your prayers are all in now. We'd like to say a very big thank you for your time, Mr. Segun Sowunmi, talking to us about this and throwing more lights to all of these matters. We'll definitely call you after the judgment is read, or even before then. We'll have more conversations. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, that brings us to the end of the show today. I am Nkechi Nnanna.
And I'm Rufai Hussaini. Thank you very much for watching.